Okay. Yeah, so we were going to have two parts to this. One was a sort of a general Q&A, and another one was a discussion of online resources. I'm wondering if we should start with the online resources and see if other people join, because the online resources stuff we can talk about, and I'll put that on the web so people can look at the links. But the questions would be probably better handled the more people we had, so I'm hoping we get a few more people. So does that sound okay to everybody?
Fine.
Sounds good.
Okay.
That works.
Yeah, I made a list of things, online resources that I like, so I can start with that and show you just a few examples. If I can make things work here. So what I'm going to do is share my screen with my browser. Okay, so you should be seeing my browser now. Is that happening?
Yep.
Okay. And now I have to go somewhere else, and I'm starting up a link. Okay. So you should see Tim Gray, that page.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So anyway, I think this is going to work. So, all right. So let me talk about this. So I've mentioned Tim Gray before. There are many online photographers and educators. I happen to know Tim Gray, not well, but when I lived around New York, I would go to B&H. They have a free lecture series. And you can just go in, sign up in advance. And Tim Gray was one of the people who talked several times that I saw. And then I ended up going on a couple of workshops with him, one photographing New York and the other one photographing in Washington State. And I really like him, and I guess he and I just, think the same way somehow. So I like learning from him. And he's got an interesting free service that I would recommend people look at. It's called Ask Tim Gray. What it is a daily email that he sends out. People send him in questions and he answers the email, and I'll show you an example of how he does that. I like the format that he uses. Let me pick something. Yeah, so this page we're looking at here is all of the Ask Tim Gray emails that he sent out ever, I guess. I don't know, he's been doing it for 5 or 6 years. So I get one every day. You just sign up for free and he emails you this thing. You don't have to look at it, of course, but if the title looks interesting to me, I look at it. But let me just show you this as an example of how he does things. So today's question, he said, this is from a few days ago, is why do you use HDR when you can make all sorts of adjustments with Lightroom or Camera Raw? And he gives two answers, which I like. He gives a quick answer and he gives a more detailed answer. So his quick answer here, you can read, it lets you get more dynamic range, and most of you know that if you're doing an HDR picture, you can set your camera to do 3 or 5 or 7 different exposure settings just with one click. Basically, it'll take those pictures. And the reason for doing that is to go to an HDR capable post-processor like Lightroom. There used to be a lot of others, and there still are dedicated Lightroom or dedicated HDR processors. Anyway, that will merge the thing and give you a picture with a higher dynamic range. cameras have been getting better and better, and their intrinsic dynamic range has been getting better and better, and you can do lots of stuff with camera raw. So this is a reasonable question. Is it still necessary to do HDR? And he gives a more detailed example here of why, what situations. Basically, if there is a high dynamic range, if there's a big difference between the darks and the lights, that's a clue that maybe you're going to need HDR. But again, with newer cameras, it's not necessarily so. But this is a nice, short, typical, succinct discussion by him of, why you would still want to do that. And it's something, if you're looking for something just every day to make you think a little bit more about photography, I recommend the Tim Gray, Ask Tim Gray thing. And I'm sure there's a way here to sign in. Yeah, probably about or something. Anyway, so that's one thing that I would recommend. Let me go back to my list here. If you use Lightroom or Photoshop or any of the Adobe things, a really good place to get help, free help, is the Adobe tutorials. And I'll put the link again on the web somewhere. But this happens to be the Lightroom tutorials, but there's one for Photoshop, there's one for Photoshop Elements, and there are all sorts of little sort of mini courses, typically 5 minutes long or so. And it's a good way to learn if you don't like trying to read things, if you don't like trying to use online help. This is helpful. Sometimes you want to do something you've never done before, and you don't want to invest a lot of time in doing it. Some of these are basically will walk you through one step at a time. An example of something that you may not have ever done before would be focus stacking, for example. You want to learn how to do that in Photoshop. You're not that great a Photoshop user to begin with. You can find a tutorial that will basically say, okay, do this, do this, do this, and end up with a photo stacked image. So that's something to keep in mind, the Adobe tutorials, and there's a whole family of those. Let me just do a couple more. I think I mentioned this site before. It's called Cambridge in Color. It's coming up. This is a UK site, and it's interesting because it's quite technical, and maybe more than you would want to know about a lot of things, but once in a while you might get curious about something in particular. And this is a really good site with little mini courses or articles, really more so than videos, about various things, white balance, how does autofocus work, all sorts of stuff like that. So this is something I look at when I'm getting confused or don't really want to understand what's actually going on with some of this stuff that you come across in the world of photography. There's another one that I just found recently. My brother actually pointed it out to me. And this is the Lightroom Queen. This is another UK site. This woman has been doing little tutorials and things for quite a while, and she does a good job. So again, it's sort of like the Adobe site. If there's a particular thing you want to understand, you can go here instead of Adobe. This is a more generic thing. She's not trying to sell Lightroom, but she has done a lot of work with it, and she's good at explaining things. So you can search your website for focus stacking or something like that if you're interested in a particular topic. So I'm just sort of racing through this. If of course, if you have a question or anything, just raise your hand or interrupt me. But if you have a Canon camera, and I'm sure the same thing is true for Nikons, it's good to look at that vendor site. This is the Canon site. And again, like the Lightroom site, although in this case pitched towards a particular camera, there are lots of little things. This was when I got a new Canon EOS RP. It has built-in focus bracketing, which is vastly easier to use than trying to move your camera, you know, a millimeter or so at a time to get a series of focus stacking images. And they have a nice little tutorial, a little 10-minute tutorial or something that shows you exactly how to do that with your camera. So whatever camera vendor you use and whatever camera model you have, you can probably find specific tutorials about, you know, things that you're trying to do with that camera. Okay, the last one I'll talk about is this site. Yeah, the site is thedigitalpicture.com. And basically what it is a review site. This is a guy whose job is to update this site, and he does very good reviews, very in-depth reviews of all sorts of photography equipment. When I was thinking about buying a mirrorless camera after having only shot with DSLRs for years and years, I went to this site. I kind of knew I wanted to stay with Canon because I had a bunch of Canon lenses, but this review was something that basically sold me on the RP versus some of the other variants of new Canon cameras. And I'll just scroll through here so you see all the level of detail. Here's the Canon RP compared to the sensor size, and the sensor size compared to other Canons, Nikon, Sonys, and whatnot. He talks about sensor size, just about any detail you would want to understand about the camera. This guy will go into it and compare whatever he's reviewing with other cameras. The other thing that he had that was very useful for me was his list of how he customizes the camera. If you get a new camera, you know, there are many menus about how to set up things like the way it's going to do focusing. You can save settings in custom settings, all sorts of things. He had about a 10-page list of what he recommended for all these settings. 80% of them you may not be interested in, but it was fun to go through that. And in most cases, I picked his settings to set up the camera, and it made things go a lot faster. And I also learned quite a bit. So sort of think of this as an online guide to your new equipment. Or your old equipment, if you've never really figured out how to do something with your camera. This site may well have a helpful, you know, little article or video about it. So, okay, so that's what I had. Let me stop my screen here. So, does anybody else have any sites they'd like to either tell us about, or we can look at them if you want to show us with your screen.
Jay, I can throw a couple at you that might be helpful. I don't know if you are familiar with Petapixel, Petapixel. It's a blog site, but many times there are photographers that are posting all kinds of things. There's new equipment information. There's all kinds of different stories, and it's just up every day. And when I hear about new stuff, I alert the guys too. And so that's a pretty good site. So you go there all the time and check that one out. There's a guy based in Washington State by the name of Brooks Jensen, and he's been publishing this Lenswork magazine for years, and also has the Lenswork website. It is a subscription to get into it, but he has a daily. You can just, if you have just an iPhone and get on the podcast, he has a daily podcast that's always very thought-provoking, and it's great. And he'll talk about everything from framing and matting pictures to where to display pictures, how to print, what to print, how to expose stuff. He's got ideas for everything. And so Brooks Jensen's a really great inspiration, and he's just an amazing guy. So if you go on your podcast list and just look up look up Lenswork, you'll get the daily, and those are really good. For certain cameras, Read Reviews is a REID, Read Reviews is really good. It's a subscription site as well, but when you talk about going in depth, like what Brian does on the digital picture, he'll do many pages on a new lens and a new camera, new whatever. So, and it's as detailed as anything you're ever going to see. And he's very good. He's based in Eastern US. And those are really handy sites to look at to really learn things. So those are some that I go to, and I agree with you that Brian at the Digital Picture, I look at him a lot for different reviews, and he calls it like it is, and he's never wrong.
Good. Yeah, there is just a staggering amount of information on the internet, so it's helpful to get, recommendations from people instead of just wandering through Google yourself. So that's what we're trying to do here. What I'll do, I'll give somebody else a chance to talk, but as I said, my intent is to make a list and put it on our website so that you don't have to write down all these things. But that would be the intent, that the club would have a sort of recommendation of online resources. Anybody else?
Somebody told me that you could ask a question on Google and get 200,000 answers in a tenth of a second, or you can ask the right person and get the right answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true.
Anybody else have any favorite sites?
Jay, is Jerry?
Yeah.
You there? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I don't know how many people out there sell their photos and work with that, but I sell quite a few, and I get my canvas from some canvas companies. But when I want to print, I sell a lot of prints, and I use Canon printers. Now you can use Epson printers too, and they're just as good. But Red River Paper has some great information on their site on printing, and it talks about the various types of papers. You get samples, whatever. But the neat thing I like about it, for me anyway, is trying to run a small business, is that they will tell you, for it's the Epson or Canon printer, which model you're using, what your cost is per print based on the size. And that's kind of interesting, because cost is very important running a business, as some people would know. But you get excellent results off of their paper. They have paper of all various sizes and all reasonably priced. And if you want good results, they can definitely provide that.
Yeah, I've used Red River exclusively for years, and they were, you go out and look at the Epsons and the big name papers, and the Red River is just as good, cheaper, and some fantastic paper itself. There's a lot of variety. It's great stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should talk a little bit about online print vendors. I print stuff myself like Jerry does, but I have a 13 by 19 printer, and that's not big enough sometimes. So I've sort of zeroed in on a couple of online print vendors. Bay Photo is my favorite for most things. You do really good, prints. They also do metal prints. They do acrylic prints if you want to do more exotic things. But they've been very useful. I don't sell many prints, but once in a while when I do, somebody wants one, I can have it printed at Bay Photo and shipped directly to the person who's bought it. And that's a convenient thing. If you use a Bay Photo or any of these places, it's a useful thing to sign up for their email service because they're always having sales. So I never buy anything from Bay Photo unless it's at least 25 or 40% off. And usually I'm not in that big a hurry that I can't afford to wait, a couple weeks or so for them to have a sale. The other vendor that I've used quite a bit is Canvas Discount. Most Bay Photo and MPix, people like that, just about everybody will do Canvas prints. Canvas Discount is really cheap. When they're having a sale, you can get a 30 by 40 canvas for $30. So it's so cheap that it's worth doing it, just to see what the picture looks like blown up that size. Or if you're going to be in a show or something like the show we did are doing at Bonobo now, I had a picture that I wanted to put in there and did a 24 by 36, and I think it was $25 or something. There are better quality
You froze up, Jerry.
Pardon? Oops. Yeah, it's telling my internet connection is
You're
unstable.
in it.
Okay, is it better now?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, okay, I don't know what happened. Yeah, so anyway, Canvas Discount, but Jerry, you recommended a Canvas place that I used a couple times, and that worked out fine too. It was a little bit more expensive, but the finish on the back of the print was better than it is a Canvas.
Let me update you where I'm at. The one I probably recommended to you was Canvas On Demand Pro. Okay, there's Canvas On Demand and there's Canvas On Demand Pro. I use them quite a bit, and I don't know if everybody saw my last posting on the website or on the Facebook of the large canvas, 42 inches by 82 inches. That was made by Canvas On Demand Pro, and they do a large range. So if you want to do large canvases, they do it, and you don't just send them an image. They will verify that image is suited to fit that particular size frame you're using, and they're very conscious on their quality of what they do. And as a matter of fact, that particular canvas, the original order came in and it was damaged by the shippers. I mean, a corner of the thing was missing. And they right away replaced it. No charge, no difficulty, whatever. They were very courteous and very quick to replace it. And so you can do a lot of different sizes and different formats. You can do them with frames, without frames. You can buy just canvas only with no frame if you don't want to stretch and put it someplace. So they're very flexible, good quality on it, and they guarantee it. And the other one, they had actually recommended me to their sister company, which is CG. Sorry, my throat's going out. The CG Prints Pro. And this is a company that I use primarily now. they do a couple of different sizes. They have limited on sizes. You can go up to 40 by 60, I think is one of the biggest you can do. But I do most of mine through them because they're very reasonably priced. They a lot of times have discounts. Most of these places will. And they're very efficient on what they do. Good quality, they guarantee it. And they follow up with it quite a bit. Now, the other thing about the CG Prints.pro is that if you go on their website and you check, you can actually print photo prints of images too, and they're very reasonably priced on that. And I've done that a few times, go and order just bulk of one particular image, because I do a lot of that. So, and they have a lot of things, frames. They can do a regular picture frame, have that framed. They'll print the picture, frame it for you, and send it to you complete, ready to hang. And there's a couple other options. They do various sizes. So I use them quite a bit. They've been my main source over the last couple of years, really, because of their the lower cost. You don't have to wait necessarily for a discount, but they're very reasonably priced on that. So that those are some of the main ones I use at this point.
So, John, I've got a question for you as maybe the
All right.
most professional person on this call. How do you get your stuff printed? Do you do it locally?
I have my own 44-inch printer. I have a Canon, and so I can do 44 by 100 feet if I have to. So I do everything on my own.
Ah.
So got an IP. So I never send anything out. I do it all myself in the studio. So when a client needs something, it's print on demand, and I just make it happen right there. I keep 3 or 4 different types of canvas in stock, because there's some glossy canvas, there's matte canvas, and different things. Then I keep a textured fine art paper. I keep a what's called a archival matte paper, and I keep a gloss, and I keep a satin photo paper. So I've got everything in stock, all 44 inches wide, so that whatever I need to do, I just do it. And I gang stuff up and print them out too. So even if it's just a passport, I can bang them right out while they're waiting.
On a 44-inch printer, John?
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
So what? Yep. You buy the ink in bulk. It's much.
Yeah.
You know, the ink cartridges are 700 milliliters each, and it takes 12 of them. So it's you know, but it just runs and runs and runs. And I make, you know, I go through 100 feet of paper at least a month.
What brand printer is it?
It's the Canon IPF 8400.
Oh,
It's a 12 color Canon printer. They've had them out for quite a while. I have 2 of them, and then 2 44 inches, and then I have a third one that's at the State Theater that we make all the posters for the State Theater and the Film Festival with too.
right.
So everything's all printed out on those, and I buy all my stuff from LexJet, which is based in Florida, but there's a local connection with that. They drop ship things from wherever, so you can get ink and paper instantly, and they have a very good resource. If you're looking for printing resources, just lexjet.com, LEXJET. You can go there and look at them, and they've got print profiles. They've got answers on ink. They have that same thing. They've got the computer, so you can figure out what your square inch use is and your cost and things like that. So yeah, I do that. But so, and I print for a lot of other people. A lot of artists in town that I duplicate, or I photograph their original paintings and then make prints for them too. So I do that as well. Veda Color does that as well, and I do it as well.
So,
here
I
in
was
town.
going to say that recently I just heard that Veda has brought their prices down for printing. So check with them too, and they're here.
yeah,
Yeah, and I'm wondering with Imaging Resource moving over onto 8th Street, if they're going to go into the printing business as well. They're moving in where the glass company, car glass company was there.
The copy company.
Windows, was it Windows? Or Glass or something?
Yeah,
No, that's not- oh. West Bay Glass.
Yeah.
yeah, they've moved south of town, and so Imaging Resource has a sign up now on that building. They're painting it black, and I'm wondering if they're going to go into the printing business as well.
I don't know.
so
If you ever
John,
need a quick print, yes.
The one thing that I really struggle with is calibration of my printer. And I don't worry about it all that much, but for a while I was printing pictures of my wife's artwork and she was very picky and just drove me crazy to try to duplicate the colors in her pastels in pictures that I had taken and then tried to print. But you must do a lot of that. I mean, you use the profiles on a per paper page, per paper basis, or how do you manage all those calibration issues?
Good question. Yeah, I do use the ICC profiles for each paper. And if you stay with one printer, and that simplifies things a lot, so you know the ink, so that you know how to plug those in. And LexJet supplies all of those ICC profiles. So you slide that into your presets. I print through Photoshop and I just do a file export and then go to the and then in the setup for the Canon setup, then you can pick your profiles and make it go. But recording, when you're photographing the original piece, I use the X-Rite color checker so that I've got all the patches in there, and so you can probe on that and make sure that everything's right and dial it in. The trick is calibrating your monitor to the printer as well, so that everything is all kind of lined up. And you also have to remember that anything that you're looking at on your monitor is backlit, and paper is not backlit. So you have your monitor has to be much darker than you would normally think. Most people have their monitors way too bright, which is throwing everything off, and then they wonder why their pictures look dark online. It's because their monitor is so screwed up. So if you don't have your monitor profiled first, you're going to be you're in trouble the rest of the way, because it's lying to you. It's just like a thermometer. If the thermometer is wrong, you're burning all your food. So so you got to have the monitor straight first. And the main thing is that monitor is going to be way darker than you think it is, because that it then will react with your eyes more like what the paper is going to print out like. So if you do, I use the X-Rite spider, or whatever they call it, that they probe and it does a little thing. The handiest thing about that is to show you just how much you have to turn the brightness of your monitor down before you're going to print. And then leave it down there. And so I work the room I work in is quite dark. There's no windows, there's nothing. And I just have a couple of very dim lights in the room, so you can see the monitor well.
Yeah.
So if you're working in a bright room and you get your monitor jacked up, nothing's ever going to turn out. But then I probe things. I make certain that all my neutrals are right in Photoshop first, and I can look at all the things. And just from doing it after a while, you do learn where those brightnesses have to be. And then I print sometimes test sheets with that color checker on the page. And if you see that either your neutrals aren't right or it's shifting one way or the other, then you can quickly go back and make those adjustments. But if you forget to probe on it, and the fastest way to neutral things is it's just in Photoshop, just Control or Command L, hit your just get your probe in there for your levels and hit the middle gray and hit your middle gray, and it should level everything right out. Then I go into Adobe Camera Raw a lot and make my adjustments that way.
Yeah.
The color mixer. But the fastest way is just, first of all, make sure your monitor's turned down and that you've always are photographing your color checker and your gray scales or whatever, so that you've always got something to probe on, because neutral gray is neutral gray is neutral gray. And that's what the world of color is based around. This is all that color. So it's tough to catch it. And then the other thing is you always have to look in your levels as well, because you think everything's right. And then if you notice that many times your picture you think will look good, but if you look at the histogram and your levels, you've got a space between the last image and the far right edge for the whites. And so you got to slide that histogram level down so that the white hits right at that shoulder. Otherwise you're going to have a dingy looking print, and it just won't sparkle. So that means you're underexposed the original to begin with. Or, a lot of art doesn't have white, but you're going to add tones to a paper on top of that. So your border is going to be gray when it's supposed to be white. So you want to make certain that you don't have any dingy gray on your file. So always check your levels to make certain. Either watch your histogram either in Camera Raw or just hit, Control L, Command L, and look at your levels.
So
and make sure that histogram is.
So let me try to play that back because I do use a card, you know, a color.
Just a
card.
solid gray card?
No, you know, the card with, yeah, it does have gray on it. And what I use it for is to do the white balance by probing that middle gray. So that's one step that I am doing. What I'm not doing, or I don't really worry about, is the histogram. So that's a good point. So that's a separate thing. There's a color balance, and then there's the dynamic range, or the right. So,
Correct.
yeah.
Right. So once you think you're close, double check, just hit Command L, Control L, whichever machine you're on, and look at your histogram levels and slide those things there. You can do that, or you can go, you know, Command Shift A, Control Shift A, get into your camera raw again, and you can do it there as well. It's just faster in levels to do that. And look at both the top and bottom end, but it's more important and critical on that white edge, because if you're printing, and this is even if you're sending something off, if your prints are coming back and they're not looking good, it's because you didn't check your histogram levels, and it's so easy to fall into a picture and look at it and not pay attention as to where the whites are, because your eye gets used to it. You have to check with that, because 255 is 255 is 255. That's white. Okay, that's paper white, and that's 0. And you've got to have that all the way up there, or it's going to look dingy. It's going to look gray. It's going to look flat. So anytime you're prepping anything for printing, you got to check your levels. It's a good thing to do.
Yeah, we did have a question from Mary Picard, who isn't on the call, but she had asked about monitor calibration, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I'd be curious about your thoughts on this, John, too. But
there's a shortcut way, but go ahead. Yeah, you've got one. Okay.
yeah, so this is the typical solution, and there are 2 or 3 vendors that provide colorimeters, and they come with software. You lay this thing on your screen, and it goes through the range of colors, and then it produces an adjustment basically for the monitor to get it accurate. The downside of this for somebody who isn't really very serious is these are relatively expensive, like $150 to $200 or so. There's one other thing I wanted to mention about these. They all come with software to do the calibration, but over the last year or two, I've noticed that a lot of people use an open source calibration system. It will work with any colorimeter, but it's called, and I've forgotten the name already. Here it is. Yeah, DisplayCal. Have you ever heard of that, John?
I have. I haven't used it, but I've seen it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
gotten very
I have that. And there's also, just if you don't want to spend the money, there are a couple of websites out there. I can't say them right now, but if you just search on calibrating your monitor, there are a number of things that'll drive you through and show you how to first turn your brightness down, get your color, get your contrast right, and get things even with nothing, just using your eyes on the screen. Windows used to have a long time ago, they had a little tutorial on how to do that with your monitors. And you see, everybody's monitor ships with the brightness turned all the way up. And when you buy a new laptop, it's shipped with it all the way up. And my rule of thumb is, when I was teaching the kids at the college, you look at on a Mac, you've got to run your brightness down just about on your little dots. You put it right in the middle, and that's a good starting spot, because it's just way too bright. And if you're using that as your reference, when you then post something online, it's going to look way too dark, because you've got it all jacked out of place. So if you don't have your monitor right first, everything's wrong. It'd be like the LCD on your camera screen. If that's lying to you, then all your pictures are wrong. So that's the one thing you go by is your monitor. So in a recording studio, if you got lousy speakers in your studio monitor, it's never going to sound right. It's the same thing. The monitor is the critical step. It really is for post-processing. It's the #1 step.
Yeah, I hadn't thought to look at doing it without a colorimeter, because I've been using one for a while, but that's a good suggestion. I mean, every monitor has different sets of controls and, you can quickly get completely confused about the color temperature versus this and that. But yeah, if there's this way to step you through that, you can do much better than just turning the dumb thing on and hoping that it's set, because it's not going to be right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What it does is it coaches you through a series of screens where it looks like those old, if you're colorblind tests or whatever, those dots, and it forces you to turn the brightness down or change the contrast until certain things show up on your screen. So you have to be in a relatively dark room to do it. But it'll coach you through it, and it'll get you 80% there without a colorimeter.
Good.
It really will. It'll get you surprisingly close.
Yeah, well, I think that's definitely helpful, because people are constantly saying when we have, display or look at their pictures, critique or something, oh, that looks completely different on my screen. Well, of course, that's why, because their thing is completely uncalibrated or miscalibrated. So, yeah.
Exactly. So the rule of thumb is if you're using a Mac and you just got that brightness control on your little keyboard there, put it down to about the middle, your little on that slider. And that's a good, because they all ship way too bright. Just like when you walk into Costco and see all those TVs on display, they've got the contrast and the color boosted way the heck up. I mean, people are, they're sold on neon colors, which isn't even close to reality. But it impresses the innocent. So, but you've got to get down to null, neutral, gray, and know what that is, and then have a starting point. And if you don't have a starting point, you're never going to get it right. It's just, you're going to be just fighting one thing after another. And it's so simple. Just understand gray.
Yeah.
And get in your mind what neutral gray looks like, and so that there's no hue or shift.
Good.
And then get the brightness right. And a lot of times you'll see a scale. It'll be from absolute black to absolute white on a screen. And if you can't see the differences in the blacks and in the whites, you've got your monitor adjusted wrong. And so those are really fast things that are just up there. You can even go to Google Image and just Google Image search and just type in, monitor calibration patches, and you'll find them that way. And you can set your brightness and contrast.
Good.
Lots of ways to do it.
Great.
Got it here, I think.
Any other online ideas or suggestions from anyone? John?
Okay.
Well, as we were talking about printing outfits, stuff like that. In my condo here, I got 12-foot ceilings. It's 14 feet wide and 50 feet long, and it's a sound channel from one end of this place to the other.
She's had her
So-
company for 15 years.
The one of the issues is, well, the reverberation, just normal conversation between people. You kind of hearing all this. Well, I've found an outfit in Ohio called Automute, and they had I've sent them my pictures and printed them, and they send them back. I don't know if you can see this. Guess not. Maybe not. But I had them print my photographs on they're basically on canvas, but then they mount them to sound absorbing material. So they're
Oh,
from 1 foot by 4 foot to 2 by 3, 2 by 4s, up that kind of size. I've got a 3 by 3, and putting that on the wall, and it really helps the reverberation. The stuff is 1.5 inches or 2 inches thick, and printed to 300 dots per inch or something. So it's really a pretty decent print. I mean, if you stick your nose on it, it's it's one thing, but you back away a couple of feet, and it's really good. really good printing. So,
So it's basically covering up this very sound reflective walls with something that doesn't reflect. So if you
yeah,
fill the
basically I've
walls with
got
pictures.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it really knocks down the sound reverberation.
Good.
Place is called Automute.
Hmm.
They're in Cleveland, Ohio. And they're not expensive.
That for me, that if a lot of my prints I order or canvases I order from CG Prints Pro, they do what they call a premium print, and the print is a solid print. It has material built inside of it. It may be very similar to what we're seeing here. And I don't know how well it works on reflected sound, but it's got deadened it quite a bit. There's no airspace and there's no reflective material in it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think just putting it on a piece of foam would do a similar thing, but
Yeah.
interesting. So maybe we should see if there are any questions. I know that Mary had one in particular that would be a good one to ask John Williams, I think. You remember the one you sent in a while ago? You probably have forgotten, it was so long ago, about light. I've got it written out here if you want me just to read it.
Yeah, fire away. I'm ready to go on anything.
Okay. All right, so this is Mary's question. She says, we know that light is a key factor in photography. Can you give some approaches when you're photographing in dull and overcast days? How about rainy days? Do you plan your shoot or does it evolve based on what you see? The last one's a slightly different question, but let's start with the light questions, I guess, John.
I think my rule is unless you purposely want to have the detail in the clouds and in the sky, the minute you have an overcast day, like I'm looking outside, you got to remember that if it's totally cloudy, it's like you have a huge diffusion dome over the world. And so that diffusion dome is a light source. And so if you have the light source in the picture, you're photographing the light source, which is going to be way brighter than any non-reflective, anything on Earth. Okay, so you've got a light source that is brighter than anything that is not a light source. Okay, a building, tree, grass, whatever. So my rule is if it's an overcast day, point down so that you don't have the sky in the picture, unless the sky is a meaningful part of the picture, like it's got super duper clouds, super duper detail. I mean, there's something crazy. Like, for instance, I was working down on the beach the other day, and there was a spectacular fog swirl that was over the bay that it looked like, remember old Lawrence Welk with a big capital L, the script L?
It's 10 o'clock.
It looked like that. And I was like, God, and I was running my blower and everything, and I couldn't get up and get back, and then it rained and it knocked it out. But that's when you're photographing the environment and you want that environment to show up, then yes, you're doing that. But you got to realize you're photographing a light source. So it's going to be very bright compared to anything down below it, horizon and down. So you've got to make those compensations. Otherwise, since you've got that gorgeous dome of light, look down at stuff. So either get up on a set of stairs and look down on the ground, look down at flowers, look down at anything, look down at anything that's going to help you make that light source work for you. That's really nice. If you've got reflected stuff like cars, that's really tough because you're going to have nothing but glare standing all over the top of a car, because a car either has shiny paint or it's shiny glass. So it's it's all going to get diffused and get destroyed. But subjects that aren't shiny, or if you want to get a water drop to make it look really good on an overcast day or a rainy day, if you've got rain that's down on petals of a flower, on green leaves, things like that, shooting down in the rain or on a gray day, man, it's perfect. You just get the most gorgeous light and it falls off naturally behind it down to the ground. So think about shooting down on overcast days. It's, but otherwise, if you're shooting across and if you've got to shoot people and everything else, and you're shooting across like this, you're going to have sky back here. So get up and shoot down at them so you don't have sky in the picture, because it's going to overpower anything in the foreground or anything that's not a light source. That's the main thing about an overcast day and a rainy day. So just shoot down, and unless you want to have if there's an amazing cloud structure, amazing sky, something like that, and you're making that the picture, yes, then understand that. But if not, point down.
John Russell, you had something to say.
Yeah, the color temperature on an overcast day is actually higher than it would be on a sunny day. You'd be very surprised when you're taking a picture, as John was mentioning, with this huge diffuse dome over you. You ever notice you go out on a cloudy day, you have to put sunglasses on because it's so bright? The color temperature is actually warmer. So you've got to be careful with your exposures too. I think John has had that problem before, haven't you, John? He went into things with the change of color temperature. The modern cameras can handle that very well. And of course, soak in the computers that we put our images into. But that's something I always think about too, is what is going to happen to the color on people's faces, for instance. You filter, John, at all whenever you have a situation like that?
No, I just shoot with a gray card reference in front of the skin, and then I just change it in RAW.
Yeah, that's an excellent idea. The gray card. Anybody carry a gray card still?
That's the reference. If you can't make gray, your color's
Yeah.
never going to be right.
That's exactly right. And also what I'll do a lot of the time too is I'll hold my hand out. I have a good idea what the exposure should be for a reading for the temperature of my hand in any given light. I've used my hand as a gray card a couple of times too. So that's something you have to experiment with your individual way that you photograph things. But also, if the sky's really bright, I'll pop a flash if the people have a little bit of shadow and the light source is behind them. That happened to Sleeping Bear one time, and I popped the flash. Everybody thought I was crazy because it was very bright out. But the camera knows, the flash knows what your proper exposure is, and that's a real nice way to do it. Of course, with digital, you could pop off 3 or 4 frames. If it doesn't work, throw it away. You're not wasting film.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, again, it all depends on where the light is and where you're working it. If you need the flash fill, that's because you're primarily backlit or top lit so much. You need some penetration to go the axis of the lens. That's why you do that. But yeah, I agree. Or a flash card or a fill, a pop out reflector, anything like that can get the axis of the light going the other way. That's what's key. But I haven't had too much of an issue with color temperature. I can zero it out with camera raw.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
John, this is Mary McDowell. John Williams, in your lecture, you talked about using a orange filter because it was rainy, on the pictures that you took during the quarantine. And I wondered if is that a go-to for you, or was that based on the situations that you were actually photographing?
That's an excellent question. I was using a monochrome camera, which does not have it does not see color. Okay. So in order to make the blues of the sky and the blues of everything else go down to make the contrast greater, that's why I use the filter. It would be much like if you had black and white film in a film camera, you boost it that same way. You can change that. If you're going to go to a monochrome image and mix it in Photoshop, that's okay. You can do that. And when you click on the monochrome button right up at the very top on your camera raw setting, it'll still leave the color mixer available to you in camera raw. And so you go to those red sliders and those orange sliders and the yellow sliders, and you can watch those same changes happen in post. I was using a monochrome camera, so it doesn't see those. It doesn't have that. So when I open up a monochrome file, Photoshop doesn't even see color. It already knows it's a monochrome file. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to make your color photos black and white, that's what you do. You click on monochrome right up at the top of Camera Raw, and then it'll go to your color slider or your color mixer that it'll say there, and start moving those red, orange, and yellow sliders. The green slider will, of course, make your foliage brighter or darker. You do them all, so you can dial in your own tonality the way you wish. But that's a great question. But I did that because I was using a black and white camera.
That's right.
But
I'd
that,
forgotten
no,
that.
oh, that's okay. No, that's wonderful. That's great, and that's a great question. But that's how you get your tonality from a color file going to monochrome. Is use that color mixer immediately in Lightroom, or I use it in Photoshop. I use Lightroom only for ganging a job up, like if I do a whole bunch of pictures and then I'm proofing it and sending it off to somebody. But all the work that I have to do in Photoshop. I can't, it's just too global in Lightroom. It just makes global changes instead of what I want to do. But it's great for proofing. So people, different strokes, different folks. I just work in Photoshop.
Thanks.
So why then you don't need filters for color work? Is that
Well, yes. I mean, if you put a red filter over your camera and you've got a color camera, everything you're going to record will be red.
so why
Correct.
would you do that?
No, you don't need to. But getting the tonality you desire, you can't shoot just straight gray on a color camera. I mean, if you switch from color to monochrome and you just leave it alone, you're going to have a very flat, uninspired image. So and it's not your work then. It's, you need to interpret that world the way you saw it or you want it to be. So that's why you drive those color mixer sliders, to get it where you want it to be. Light, dark on all those channels. You'd be surprised if you go down to the bottom in magenta and purple, the changes that we'll make. You wouldn't think so, but there's changes to your monochrome image, even in purple and magenta. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, basically there's no need for a physical filter if you're shooting color.
No, not with a color camera.
What about a polarizer? Does that one make sense? Makes sense sometimes, right?
Oh yes, polarizers make sense. UV filters make sense because there is UV going at your sensor. There's UV going through your lens, and you can knock it down a little bit. It's not hypercritical, but it also just, I mean, I used to be somewhat negative on UV filters, but I'm open-minded to everything, and I see a difference. And plus it protects that outer element of your lens, so it makes the lens worth more when you go to sell it. So, I mean, you cannot tell any image degradation if you're buying a decent filter and it's clean and you put it on, you cannot tell the difference. But it does help knock down the blue. So it's a good thing to do. I mean, I have expensive lenses, and if I'm out there, I don't want anything to happen to that front element. Okay, so I mean, I'm shocked at how much money I'm carrying around in my bag. It's stupid, so you don't want to wreck them. So it's cheap insurance, and it does knock down the blue. Polarizers are very good, especially for glare. It's glare elimination. And if you wear polarizing sunglasses, and all you have to do is just tilt your head if you've got your polarizing sunglasses on. And if you see a difference, then you go, oh, I guess I need a polarizer. But don't try to shoot with your polarizing sunglasses on. It's all going to go black. Okay. So, but that's a handy tip. If you can see a difference, if you've got your head and you tip, yeah, you need a polarizer. Just remember, you're going to lose 2 stops of light. So your shutter speed is going to drop by 2 stops. Any other question about filters, lenses? I'm an open book.
Very good. Good aid, good help.
So yeah, I guess I've got a lens question. I've gone back to my long lenses that I didn't use for quite a while, and I've got got one refurbished and I bought a new one that I like. The new one is a little strange though. It's a 800 millimeter fixed focal length, fixed f8 focal length. And it's a challenge to use, but I've gotten some interesting pictures. Have you used long lenses a lot, or is that not something you do much of?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got long lenses. Did you get the new RF 800 or 600? Is that what you bought?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's just an f11 lens all the time, f11. And so the idea with them doing that, and it slides down like a coffee can, so
Right, yeah.
it's very small. And the fixed aperture, they used to make these mirror lenses that were just f8. I think JR probably had one, I had one. There were 500 f8s and 800 f8s, and they were a mirror, so they weren't very long lenses. They were compressed inside, and it always gave you donut hole highlights on them, so you could carry a long lens without a lot of stuff. And it was a fixed aperture as well. And it depends on what you want to do. Every job, it's a tool for a job. And if you've got a Phillips screwdriver and you need a straight slot, then it's not going to work. Okay. So the whole idea of a long lens is just being further back or compressing your subject. If you're like shooting down a long street or shooting down a long railroad track, or you're trying to get a lot closer to a bird or something, or at a sporting event, get something closer where you physically are not allowed to walk out on the field, and you want detail, then you've got to shoot with a longer lens, longer piece of glass. So, but the whole idea with that new RF lens is that with ISO being able to let it slide up, you can use a higher ISO and a high shutter speed combination at f11 and still get what you need to get. The challenge is with long lenses is you get atmospheric haze if you're trying to shoot across water or trying to shoot across from one hill to the next hill or something. And that atmospheric haze is just, it just degrades the image a lot. The other thing is that you've got to have it either on a monopod or on a full blow tripod, because camera shake, even the slightest little bit, magnifies so greatly with 600s and 800s. When I shoot with anything long like that, I either have a pre-mirror flip up so that for 2 seconds before, so that there's no camera vibration going on, and it's on a solid tripod and it's locked down. There's no such thing really as hand holding a long lens. If you've ever looked through a set of binoculars and tried to look at something a long way away and it's just shaking every which way, that's what you're doing. And I don't care how short your shutter speed is, it's going to be blurry. So if you're not on if you don't have it on a solid tripod and locked down, you're just wasting your time to get a quality image. It just doesn't work. I mean, anybody that tries to do anything with a rifle and a scope, they'll lie down on the ground with a set of legs to steady the gun even, because it's just too wiggly. Just your heartbeat alone is shaking the camera so much that you can't keep it solid. So steady tripod, lockdown, and I always put the timer on at least 2 seconds before I let it go off. Now, if you're shooting a sporting event, you won't be using an f11 lens. You'll have a wider aperture lens and a much higher shutter speed. And you'll be shooting at 4,000th of a second or something like that with a longer, faster lens. But the 800, the 600 and 800 f11s are a compromise. You got it for less than $1,000, and it still magnifies, and it does that. But you got the haze problem, you got the shake problem. Those are the things you have to always take into consideration with long glass.
Yes,
I love them. It gets you the look nobody else gets.
Yeah. No, it's definitely fun to use, and I do use a tripod with it. But I am a little mystified that shooting at a really fast shutter speed doesn't help more than I thought it would. Because you can crank the ISO up pretty high on these new cameras.
Yes.
And I thought, once you got to less than 2,000ths of a second or something like that, that it would make handheld shooting possible, but your experience is you can't ever make the shutter speed short enough to overcome that shaking.
Not really. I mean, if you're shooting an action sport, you can get away with a little bit of blur. But if you're trying to do something where it's locked down, no, it's just not going to work. You've got to be on a tripod.
Yeah.
And again, it's either a 2-second or 10-second timer and back away from everything and make sure that nothing's wiggling on that tripod. That's the only way. I mean, I shoot with a 640 and longer, and you know, and then I can put an extender on that, and I've got basically almost a 1500 millimeter lens. And if you don't have everything locked down, it's just a joke. I mean, it's you just look at it and go like, eh. But your body movements, even when you think you've got it controlled, you don't. So it's you just have to be on a tripod. And turn the self timer on and just back away.
Yeah. Well, one thing that has worked, one thing that I do when I shoot birds, I don't do that very often, but is I shoot at a high speed, you know, multiple shots. And that's kind of interesting because I think I'm taking the picture without changing anything. But in that array of 7 or 8 pictures that it's taken, there's a big difference often in the sharpness. It's almost like I've caught the instant, you know, where everything is working. Have you ever noticed that effect, or do you do that?
You may have an AF thing going on there too as well. And if it picks up a leaf or something in the foreground, or there's some other thing going on, or if it's hopping around, these AF systems are very fast now. If you're doing birding stuff, I don't know if you're familiar with what like a Wimberley or a gimbal mount is. Instead of just a tripod head that's like this, it's a U-shaped gimbal that comes down, and then it's got a swivel up here, and then it's got a swivel here. And so you can move the camera every which way, but it still stays on a tripod. So it's very handy to move up, aim up and down, and move left and right, swinging the whole gimbal around.
Oh, yeah.
But yet it's still locked down. A gimbal mount is the thing to use on if you're trying to move a long lens and trying to capture stuff.
Yeah.
But my other suggestion would be, if you're shooting SF, get your bird in there. If it's, you know, that whatever it is, get your AF and then reach up and slide off the AF slider.
Yeah.
Go to manual focus, because it's just trying to pick new spots all the time. That computer is there to just drive that focus unit in and out.
Mhm.
And so I a lot of times with long glass, I will get it dialed in. I will like go to the ultimate magnification. I'll go 10x up on the screen. I'll pick a light point or a highlight or a glint, focus on that, and shut off the AF.
Mhm.
Then I know it's not going to move and nothing's going to drift. Then I go back to 0, and then, so that's the other thing is to go in and eyeball a highlight or a light source, if you can find a light, you know, or if you're looking at a horizon, find a tree that's up on the horizon with branches, and just you know, go to 10x on your screen, manually rack that focus back and forth, and then just leave it shut off. That's when you're going to get the sharpest pictures.
Yeah. Okay.
AF is not always your friend, especially with long glass. Now, in sporting events, when stuff is closer and you're using not a 600 millimeter lens and you're using a faster piece of glass, you can, at least on a monopod, spin around and do what you need to do and whatever. But it just, the weight, I mean, these big lenses are heavy. Yours isn't. That's the nice thing. And that's the other problem is that the lightweight, it wiggles more. Every heartbeat, it goes up and down more. So
Yeah.
that's why you got to be on a tripod.
Mhm.
And the way I describe tripods is, if you've ever seen anybody paint with make an oil painting or a watercolor painting, they've always got their frame on an easel. You can't imagine trying to make a painting without an easel. Well, you can't try to do a photograph without a tripod. So, you know, if you're making art, your tripod is your easel. It's that simple.
Yeah, good.
Got to have it.
Well, I had sent out a questionnaire. I didn't get many responses, but there was one interesting question that we could ask different folks. And that is there some piece of gear other than the camera and the lens that you particularly find useful? And I'll give you my example of that. I have, I use this system called Xhume. It's a magnetic system that instead of having to unscrew filters, they just snap in place. It makes it much easier and faster and safer, I think, to change to a neutral density filter or a polarizing filter if you can just stick it on the end of the lens here. So it's an investment. You've got to buy this little magnetic ring that, you know, fits on your filters, but it does make it simpler. And I did have one occasion where I threaded a filter on the camera, and that was a real nightmare to try to get that off. I was terrified I was going to break the camera or the filter or both. This eliminates the need to screw things on and off. They just stick on with a magnet. So anyway, that's my one of my favorite little accessories. Anybody else have any? Go ahead.
You still lose the cover itself.
No, yeah, I've learned to always put that in my back left pocket. That's where I always put the lens covers. As long as I don't sit on a hard chair, I'm okay. But, yeah.
Jay, follow up with that a little bit. Watching you with your lens, whatever, I always keep my lens hood on. I see a lot of people out, the cameras out there without a lens hood. The lens hood is good if you got bright sun coming in from the sides or whatever. But my main purpose is that if I'm walking along and I accidentally bump my camera into something hard, it doesn't break my lens. It protects my lens. And that's worth the value of just putting it on. I just keep it on there all the time. And with the Canon, I don't know about the Nikons and the other ones, but most of the lens hoods, you can reverse them if you want to save space.
Yeah.
But they're easy to put on there. So to protect my lens and my investment, I keep the lens hood on.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I don't do that. I don't use the lens hood nearly enough because it's not on most of the time and I don't want to bother putting it on. But and then I regret that when I get home. But that's another good reason to have it, leave it on all the time. Yeah.
I attended a seminar, this is 15 years ago, probably, was a couple from Northern Michigan. I've forgotten their name now, but anyhow, they did the whole thing on the lens hood and had a series of pictures with and without. It was really amazing how much side distortion you get without a hood on
Oh,
that you don't really realize is there.
yeah. The
You
light
shoot
coming in.
it with and without,
Yeah.
and you got quite a bit of glare.
Yeah, lens hoods are critical. If I can add my little bit, I went and got it. I must have between 20 and 30 camera bags. Buying different ones for different things. But I got it. I'm a member of Canon Professional Services, and my membership, because I'm a platinum member, they sent me this Think Tag, but it's a sling bag. And at first I thought, well, this thing's kind of a joke, but when you wear it, you put it over your shoulder like this, and then you just carry it. And then you spin around, and you can just unzip the top right here, and it falls open this way. Of all the bags I own, this is the only one that makes sense. And something big or some big backpack thing or anything else, but this you can spin around and back. I can put this thing on ride my bike around. I can do everything, take the cameras, take lenses, take whatever I need to do just in this sling. And it's very comfy, and you can adjust it. And this is called it's by Think Tank. It's the Turnstile 10. They also make a 20 that's a bit bigger, but that's too big. but it's got a vented back. It's got a rain pouch that pops out to cover it over. Of all the stuff I own, this one is the most practical for if you're going to go out and go for a walk, and it doesn't look like a camera bag. Which is nice too. So, but it's very ergonomically designed, and it was something that they shipped to me free, and I was like, oh, I don't want this. And I tried it. It was like, I love this thing. So, to each their own. But you shouldn't be carrying the whole world around with your camera anyway. Just keep it small and light and simple. But that also limits you. And so I'm a big fan of a sling bag like that. So that one is an absolute winner in my book.
So this is.
I've always thought Think Tank was the very best bags. Specifically, if you were traveling or that sling bag, they're the best.
Hey, John, real quick, when I bought my first DSLR Canon, I bought it in Hong Kong, and I bought this bag, which is very similar to what you're using there. It's a
right.
Low Pro,
Yeah.
a very reasonable price. But unlike you, I put too much crap in it. It becomes heavy.
Get a small one.
Stuff I very seldom use, but I think I need it with me. But it's very about the same size as yours.
Yeah, this is a Low Pro too, and I've been using these for years. This sling design is terrific. This is a bigger one than yours, John, but yeah.
Sling bag I use, I call it my Mackinac Island bag because it's the kind of thing where if you're going to go for the day, the one I've got is very similar to John's, except it says Nikon on it. And it's got a place for a water bottle. It's got a place to put smaller things like fingernail clippers or lip balm or anything else. It's extremely comfortable, like John said. And I also use it when I go to Washington, D.C. with the Honor Flight, because you can carry everything with you without any extra pain, including your water, which is very nice if you're away from a water source. And they're not expensive. But Think Tank, like John mentioned, is probably the best camera bag producer right now. That or Domke.
Yeah, they
You
do
want to
nice
save your
stuff.
bag, don't carry everything you own.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I had a question on printing. Some of you stated you do most of your stuff on online printing. Is that due to cost as far as less expensive as opposed to like a place like the Camera Shop in Traverse City?
I can answer for myself on that. To print, it depends how much you're printing. Printers are fairly expensive. I just recently bought a Canon 1000, Pro 1000. It's about $1,400. But you have to print enough to make it worthwhile, and plus your ink is expensive. So you got to base it on how much printing you're going to do and what you're going to do with it.
As far as the Camera Shop though, is anybody, the quality there and the cost, has anybody compared that to some of the other sources? Does anybody use the Camera Shop?
I haven't used the Camera Shop recently, so I don't, but I thought it was a little pricey.
They are, yeah.
And check in with Veda, really, they're here and
Great.
they are wonderful. And I know like Mark Lindsay has used them forever. There's a lot of folks that use them, and like I said, their prices had just come down. Because once you get into some bigger things, they were pricey as well. But my son has just recently printed some pretty big canvas, and he was thrilled. And the quality is fantastic. And they're also really great with making sure it looks just the way you want it. So check with Veda. They're right on, what road is that? It's not Parsons.
Across from the library.
Whitmere.
Whitmere.
Woodmere, thank you. God, yes, Woodmere. They're right on Woodmere and they're wonderful.
Thank you,
And
Amy.
they're right next to that auto shop or auto parts store.
Arts.
Arts? Okay,
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah, when I make print, people bring files in for me and I'll print them. If they set it up in advance, I can come in and make a print. They bring the file to me and they can watch it on the monitor. We can dial things in and I make the print right there for them too. So that's something
do
that I'm.
you do that too?
Absolutely.
Should we just come to you?
I've been doing it for, I've had the first digital printer in town and I had an Epson and then I switched over to Canon and the Canon's better in my opinion. So
Right.
it's 12 color and it's got more grays in it. It does a beautiful job. So it does dynamic black and whites and colors. So yeah, I print for other people. No
Oh,
problem.
that's great. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Absolutely. More the merrier. So I've got all the inks, I got all the paper, I got everything you need. And then some people, if they want special paper, like they'll buy their own Hanamula paper and then we'll just keep it there. And when they come back in, then we'll pull their paper out and I'll put it on the printer for them. So, and I do stuff for artists stuff gets shipped to Europe, gets shipped to Iceland, gets shipped all over. So I've been doing that. Well, since the first digital printer came out and I've had one since 99. I've had large format printers. So,
That's great.
yep, been plugging right along. So if you ever need it, just give me a shout and we can plop it right on, either email me the file or whatever, but it's not a problem. It's easy.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Sure.
Plus, you could take it home with you when you get all through with it. You can take it home with you.
Yeah, you're gonna see
Yeah.
it come out. That's the whole idea.
Same day service, yeah.
Yep.
And you get to be with John.
Yeah. So yeah, if you ever need anything, it's all the old saying, quality, speed, price, pick two, because you can't get all three. But it'll be really good quality. And I'm pretty much, unless you get super big, it's $20 a square foot.
Okay.
So, but we do test prints. We do everything before, until you're happy, and then we make the print. So you get total control.
That's great.
So if you ever need it, let me know. Happy to help.
Well, we talked about everything in the world of photography. Seems unlikely,
I
but
think
anything else? I guess, all right, so I've got a question. I'm just curious about how many people have changed to mirrorless. I know that I have and Jerry has. Anybody else done that? And John, yeah, John is an RP.
John did, yeah.
Yeah, so I've been really
I have
happy
a-
with that. Lighter. I like there's no optical viewfinder, which I thought would be a problem, but actually seeing the real sensor image even through the viewfinder, I think is a good thing. So I've gotten used to that. Anybody else have any impressions, pros and cons about mirrorless?
No, I really like mine. The lighter weight is obviously that. And also the new lens selections. From all reports I'm seeing, Canon, which I use, they're dropping a lot of their older lenses and more are going to the mirrorless type lens, giving you a lot of more options. And they're all so far been very reasonably priced and compact. So
Does there seem to be a image quality difference between the lenses of the older lenses to the mirrorless camera lenses? Have you
not that
noticed?
I noticed. Yeah.
I think the difference there would be the quality of the camera body that captures the image. There's a change there with everything. Every time you have a different chip or a different sensor, the quality is going to improve, I think. I don't have any reason to switch. I've got a whole bag full of equipment, which I've already paid for. But anybody who knows Steve Jessmore I was in the camera shop a couple of weeks ago and he was loading up a bag full of equipment because he switched over. He used to work in Saginaw. And some of his bird pictures, I want to get him to be a speaker for us. He's an excellent photographer, and he just switched over and he can't say enough good things about it. But the way he shoots and what he's shooting is perfect for that particular combination as well, which is something I always stress. How does the camera feel in your hand when you handle it? What are the results you're getting if you're going to spend the income, no matter whether it's a Canon or a Sony or a Nikon or anything? You need to be able to show people what comes out of the other side. And that's extremely important for everything. I know John's got some really interesting pictures, especially that monochromatic camera body. It does what you want it to do, doesn't it, John?
Yeah, and those are Leicas, and so Leica has always been quote unquote mirrorless because there's never been a shot, I think. So it's a rangefinder camera, and I use a color and a black and white version of that, but it's not the mirrorless of seeing the image. And I've got the Canon EOS M5 that I've had for a number of years since that came out, and that's really handy. It's a half frame camera. It's a 24 megapixel, and the sensor is pretty decent on it. They tried to make everything very lightweight, so it's a very light camera, and it's handy for travel and stuff. But I just prefer the Leicas better. In my studio work, I see no reason yet to switch over. I do mostly electronic flash in my studio, and so electronic viewfinder does not show you what the flash is going to give you, and it totally is faked out by it. So there's no impetus for me to switch there. I have the 5DSR, which is the 51 megapixel. And so really Canon hasn't come out with anything larger than that yet. There's talk of a 100 some megapixel camera, which will come in handy. That's coming out on the EOS R line. So that I would probably switch over there then. But for electronic flash and studio stuff, mirrorless doesn't gain you anything at all. So it's only ambient light where you really see the difference.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed is that the newer camera, whether it's mirrorless or whatever, the features built into the cameras itself. The Canon, for example, you have time lapse. You can have HDR. You can do what's the other one I was thinking about? Focus stacking on some of them. It's already built into it, so it saves a lot of time and trouble, and gives you a lot of great features. There's many, many more in that. I do a lot of video with mine. And I have just the R model, and it's very easy to switch your mode from still pictures to video. You hit a couple of buttons and it gives you all the settings you need to do different formats of video, and it's very steady and does a good quality job of that. So that's some of the things you get. It's like you're upgrading your camera, and you're going to upgrade your computer. You're going to get more features and more benefits out of it.
Is the biggest difference though the weight that you're carrying, the mirrorless being lighter as opposed to some of the bigger, heavier DSLRs?
Yeah, to be honest with you, when I first got it and put it on, whatever, I didn't realize it until I picked my old camera up with the same lens on it. Then there definitely is a difference in the comfort level of it because it's a smaller footprint, lighter weight, and if you're out walking around like I do, a lot of times I'll just free carry my camera in my hand, or sometimes I'll use a strap. It makes a difference, especially as you get older.
Yeah.
You don't have the mechanisms of the mirror flipping up out of the way. You don't have to worry about ever wearing a mirror out.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
they last forever anyhow, but
Yeah.
it is eventually an issue.
Yeah. Well, with my old camera, I always use mirror lock up anyway. Just to make sure that I didn't have the mirror movement affecting it.
It depends on what you're doing.
Yeah.
To me, it was the ability to use all the old lenses I had. A little adapter, I can go on, I've got a little M and the R, and I can swap lenses up and down the system. So didn't have to spend money on all that, bunch of new lenses.
That is a good thing, although until I switched, I always used a crop sensor camera. So a lot of my older lenses are for crop sensor, and the new lens or the new camera will automatically crop. But I know I'm losing a big chunk of the sensor when I do that. So it's been tempting me, and I've been buying some full frame lenses for the camera, and those really work well. Canon L lenses with the Canon mirrorless. Some of the sharpest and best pictures I've ever taken have been with this new setup I've got. So I'm really happy with it.
One interesting thing you can do with mirrorless is buy these adapters and swap old lenses and everything else and experiment. I did one time, I think I had 13 50-ish millimeter lenses, and I did a lens test with one camera body and was able to use all these different, Canon, Nikon, Canon FD, Leica, Pentax, you name it. I did a whole big test just with all these different lenses to find out which was the best 50 of all the 50s that I had. And you can do it all in one camera body. And that's really cool if you just buy the adapters. And so you can learn lots of interesting stuff. And amazingly, an old FD Canon lens, a 55 millimeter 1.2, just about smoked everything in terms of absolute image quality and fidelity and what they call micro contrast, the ability to hold on to the highlight detail. A 1972 Canon lens just smoked everything. And that's the kind of stuff you can find out.
Yeah.
So it's really fun to experiment. And so then if you're at a flea market or you're in an old camera store and you see an old lens lying around for $5, pick it up, buy the adapter for it, stick it on a mirrorless camera and see what it'll do. You can get way more character out of these older lenses. The new ones are just, it's all about sharp, 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 sharp. So you can cut yourself on it, but does it have any character? Does it have anything interesting? How does it throw the background out? You got to look at all those different things. So, and again, it's every lens is a paintbrush and everybody wants to paint something different. So that's quite all right. There's no rights or wrongs. It's like, how much pepper do you want on your steak? There's no right answer. So it's what's up to you and what helps you make a picture. That's kind of what's important.
On that same thought, John, if you want to challenge yourself, and I bet you, John, you've probably done this. I know a lot of us have. Take one lens, and that's all you shoot with all day long is one lens, be it a wide angle one or a telephoto or anything in between. Take one lens and go out and challenge yourself and say, what can I do with this lens? And especially if you have a bag full of lenses, you might find a lens that you forgot you had. I've got an 85 millimeter lens. It's a 1.8, and I started playing with that, I don't know, 2 months ago or something. It's a fabulous portrait lens. It's also nice and sharp. Like John said, here's this 35-year-old lens that smokes everything I've got right now. But it's a lot of fun to take one lens and tell yourself, this is all I'm going to use today.
That's all I do.
Yeah. It's quite a challenge sometimes. Like Tony Spina told me once when I first started working with the Free Press in 1970 as a freelancer, I said, I only have 3 lenses. He said, get closer. It was like, oh. So if you have a 35 millimeter lens, get closer, fill the frame, see what happens. It's a lot of fun. It's very challenging.
If you want to take more interesting pictures, stand in front of more interesting stuff.
Like that.
That's simple. It's that simple. It's not about the lenses. It's not about any of all that stuff. It's where you are and what you do. And so I only go with, whenever I'm walking with my camera, I only have one lens on there and no zooms. Leicas don't make zooms. So I have a 28, 35, 50, 75, 90. Take your pick. So I just walk with one. And pre-visualize, know what you want to get in advance, and then just carry that lens. And you'd be surprised how much of a landscape you can do with a 90 millimeter lens.
Yeah,
A 75 or a 50, it's just, and just teach yourself what each lens will do and see. You don't need, if you got a zoom, fine, but you pay for it one way or the other. The more pieces of glass the light has to travel through, the less fidelity it's going to have. And less light passes through. So simplify. my
One
mantra.
other thing I was thinking about recently, having purchased another piece of equipment. How many of you have updated or renewed your list of gear that you have? Everything you have, all your strobes, all your lenses, everything. Make a list and put it somewhere, make several copies. So if you ever have a loss or anything else happens to you, you have a list of what you own, including serial numbers, by the way. If you ever go to Canada, once we're allowed to go overseas again, they're gonna want to know serial numbers of everything in your camera bag. So if you haven't upgraded it in a while, treat yourself for half an hour and go back through and make sure everything's correct. Because as we add to our retinue of things, I had a couple of three different pieces I hadn't written down yet for insurance purposes, and they ride with me a lot. They could be lost or damaged, so I thought I'd bring that up just as if you're bored, do this.
That's a great thought. I haven't done that myself in a while. So, and also just
It's
take
easy to let it
pictures of
go,
everything
yeah.
on your, take pictures of everything and with the serial number and on your phone.
Good idea.
Yeah, I keep in the notes part of my phone, I'll keep a list of my stuff with the serial number, including all my cars. And with the
Exactly. Yeah.
VIN number and all the details you need, just in case of emergency. If I lose my phone, I'm dead. But anyway.
That's the best information I've heard all day. I gotta let my dog out.
A lot of good stuff.
So let me mention one other thing, as long as we're sort of doing random stuff. I was going through my equipment because I've never gotten rid of anything. I'm sort of a hoarder too, and I ended up having, I think, 4 cameras. You know, that some of them were 6 or 7 years old. And I decided this is stupid. I'm going to do something with these. So some of them I sold to B&H because it was really easy. You just tell them what you've got. They say, okay, here's the price. They send you a free shipping label and you know, then they send you the money back. Although I sent one lens in and they wouldn't take it because there was something wrong with it. So this is a bit of a digression. So I sent it to Tamron. It was a Tamron lens, and it was out of warranty. Tamron has a 6-year warranty on their lenses, but this was like 6 months out of warranty. But they fixed it anyway for free and sent it back. And I was gonna, okay, I would send it to B&H, but I told my brother what I was doing. He said, no, don't do that. I'll sell it for you on eBay. And I hate selling anything. I certainly didn't want to try to deal with eBay, but he does it. So he said, okay, I'll sell it on eBay. So Canon was going to give me, I think it was $375 for this lens. It was a 150-600 Tamron. And my brother sold it for $580 on eBay. Partly because he knows what he's doing and he looked at what other people were doing and everything. But so I was impressed with that. Not that I want to learn how to use eBay. Luckily, my brother will do that if I want to sell anything else. But I'm just curious how do other people sell or get rid of their old equipment? Anybody have any?
You know, the Facebook Marketplace is really good. And if you're a Canon user or a Nikon user, there are actually groups. And I go every day to look. I buy lenses if I need oddball stuff. It's on Facebook, and you go to the groups and you look at Canon buy and sell used equipment, and everybody seems to be unloading their DSLR stuff right now. And you can buy 50mm f1.2s, 135 f2s, 85s. Oh my God, they're just all over this, and bodies. And so you're just dealing with people directly on Facebook that way, and you can look at their you can just go look at them and see if they're a real person, and look at their profile and everything, and just chat with them and whatever. And I bought a tilt shift lens last month from a guy in Maine, and he packed it up beautifully, and nobody takes any money. Facebook doesn't make a penny. It isn't like eBay where they're, taking a percentage and all that stuff. So Facebook Marketplace is suddenly better than Craigslist and everything else. MPB is there, which is a site, but they're out there to make money. So anytime you're dealing with a site where you send it off and then they're making money, you're just not going to get as much back. But you can also negotiate with these people on Facebook Marketplace. And I've bought multiple things and it's all gone great. And I've sold things that way. I've sold probably 4 or 5 lenses that way. You just agree and you just, back and forth, you just chit chat and how do you want it shipped? What's your mailing address? And go take it to the UPS and send it off, or, buy your express box at the post office and wrap it up and send it off, and it's easy. So I'm very impressed with Facebook Marketplace because you are face to face with these people. And if whatever you can find listed, and in the Canon one, that Canon group, it's and the Leica group, I bought stuff through there, and you just see what other people have, and you can just see what's out there. And if you're looking for something, you can just hit the search box. And if you're looking, like I was looking for a 17mm tilt shift lens, and I found one. So Facebook Marketplace, and then is that way, and the Marketplace, and then also just in the groups as well. So and you do a search and you can find it.
Yeah, I've used the Facebook Marketplace a couple times, and it's like you say, John, it's very, very good. Also, there's a company out there called KEH Camera, and they will buy used equipment. And I sold one lens to them. They were very reasonable. Use eBay to check, see what the marketplace is buying them for, not selling on eBay. Just because somebody has it out there and there's people are bidding on it doesn't mean that's what they're going to sell it for. See what they actually sold it for, so you get an idea of what your price market is. But KEH was very, very easy. At least, like you said for the other ones, they sent me all the information to pack and ship. Didn't cost me anything to ship it to them. They got it. They reevaluated it, came back and said, "This is what your price is going to be. Do you agree?" Yes. And they give you an estimate to begin with, and they'll give you one after they look at it, and they might find some scratches or something minor. But they're very, very reasonable and very, very quick to work with. So.
Oh, good.
John, how do they on the Facebook Marketplace? Who holds the money? How do you know if you sell something? Are you dealing directly with a person? Do you send them the camera and they send you the money, or is there a middleman that?
Yeah, it's generally if I'm selling something, somebody will. I'll just give them my PayPal address, and they just send me the money. When I get the money, I put it in a box and ship it off.
So there is a trust. There's got to be a trust there.
Well, yeah, I think PayPal pretty much is a small contract one way or the other. I also can take credit card numbers. If somebody wants to give me a credit card number, I can just run it through the business and just do it that way. So however people want to buy stuff, it's easy. I have had 0 issues with that. It's simple. I just have a PayPal account. I just give them the number, or the guy that I bought the lens from, this tilt shift lens, he gave me his PayPal number, and I just, I've got a PayPal credit. I've got everything there. So it just, whatever. And it just takes it out of my bank account instantaneously. Nothing. It's easy. So,
and I also use PayPal. The nice thing about it, you can set up invoicing through it. So like John says, if you get somebody wants to buy it, if you get their email address is all you need. You send them an invoice. When they pay, then you ship them the product. Very simple, very easy. It costs you a few cents, but big deal. You got security.
Yeah, and what I ask them for is to once they've either taken it to the post office and doing express mail or UPS, take a picture of their shipping label, so I can see my name that's on it and my address. And, that way I know, and so and I can see my tracking number, I can see everything, and that the purchase is that they've taken to the store or the post office, it's coming.
Yeah.
And I haven't had one issue one way or the other. It works pretty well. The Facebook marketplace thing or the groups, it pretty much takes the shysters out of it because, they got to prove that they've got it.
Yeah.
And you can ask them for more pictures once you communicate with them directly. So,
And if they're local, you can just meet them.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the cool thing about the marketplace is it'll show you those Traverse City ones first or within 50 miles, and then it'll show you stuff outside that area. So, and that goes for anything. So, but it's kind of taken the classified ads and everything else and kind of made them an antique. So it's very handy the way you can communicate with people.
Yeah.
And there's deals out there too.
Yeah. Sometimes
people just are desperate to unload stuff. And man, you just see, I not that I buy it, but I look at prices and go, wow, that's a deal. I wish I knew somebody that needed it. Because every once in a while, they're just mind-blowing prices.
So how much was your tilt shift lens? I'm curious about that.
They're about 3,400 new, and I got this one for 17.
So there's still price.
17. Yeah, this is the Canon, it's the 17, it's a nutty piece of glass. It's like nothing you've ever seen.
Yeah.
But for, I do interiors and I do product stuff and things like that. And it's the only way to go. I'm a big fan of tilt shift lenses, but I didn't have the 17 and I needed it for a shoot.
Yeah.
You ever use the Photoshop functions to straighten stuff up like that, John?
Oh, absolutely all the time. The problem is when you're doing, what I was doing was either a look down shot where I'm in a restaurant and I have to be high enough to be looking down on the tabletops and yet make the room square. That doesn't happen in Photoshop. You gotta have the look down. You gotta have the perspective correction to do it. And then I shoot interiors of bank buildings and things like that, and everything's got to be plumb and square. And so when you put the camera one place or another, then you just do the rise. You just shift rise or something, and you can get everything. So and you just can't do that with a regular piece of glass. It just doesn't happen. So that's why you have to have them. They come in very handy. And for products, many times if you're looking down, you got to have the front tilt so you can keep everything in focus front to back. I used to use this all in view camera stuff and 4x5s, 8x10s, 11x14 cameras. So, I'm used to doing it and I understand exactly how the principles work. And we did it in the studio forever. But when you had to start doing the same studio shots on 35mm, you had to have the tilt shift lenses to be able to pull that stuff off. Keep the focus there.
Keep the focus.
Yeah. Okay,
Very
well,
flexible.
any final thoughts? We've used up our time, so.
Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I
Good
learned a
stuff.
lot.
Great. Yeah, great session.
Yeah, I'll
Good
make a
conversation.
recording and put it on our YouTube channel as we usually do. So tell your friends if they missed this. Okay. All right. Well, bye-bye, everybody.
Take care.
Bye now.
See you later.
Bye,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
It's 11 o'clock.